And good morning. This is Common Sense America. I am Eden Hill. And I tell you what, it's Monday, February the 13th, right before Valentine's Day. I don't know if any of you saw the last night's Super Bowl. I'm still trying to wake up from that Super Bowl. My husband and I bet last night. I went for the hometown team, Philadelphia Eagles, and he went for the Kansas City Chiefs with no connection whatsoever to the Chiefs. And, I went to bed at halftime. And I had it in the bag because we bet a certain amount of money on each other's team. And I said, just write out the check. I'll see you in the morning. Well, that certainly didn't pan out for me on my side. And my husband wakes me up in the middle of the night. So, honey, it's time to pay the piper. I said, are you kidding me? What happened? So I've been listening to the Philly station. My friend Chris DeGaulle, 990 AM, The Morning Drive. Go over and listen to his podcast because he was raised in Kansas City, but he also reports from Philadelphia. And his podcast and his radio show this morning was great in regards to that. But as we talk more about the Super Bowl, I want to talk later about the Kelsey brothers. I want to talk about the Star Spangled Banner. I want to talk about just a lot of the pieces that we saw last night to the Super Bowl and some of the lighter moments as well. But I will tell you this, before we bring over our first guest, Jonathan Emord, many of you are very familiar with him. He's been on the show quite a few times. He is now the United States Senate candidate for Virginia for 2024. And I'm excited to talk with him because he has been at the very forefront as a constitutional law attorney, as a speaker, as an author of The Authoritarians, talking a lot about what is happening in our nation's schools, what's happening in our nation's backyard, and what's happening to our children. And many of you, after last Thursday's episode with Turning Point USA high school 16-year-olds talking about what they uncovered in some of the local schools here in Eastern North Carolina. I got comments from California. I got comments from Tennessee. I got comments here from another school district here in Eastern North Carolina. People are concerned. Parents are concerned. And actually, educators are concerned, and they have no voices to stand up for the transgender agenda, seeing Bibles, seeing history thrown out of our schools. So we're going to be breaking it down. And I am probably going to be beating a dead horse as we continue to talk about this, but I'm not going to let this go because this is one of the biggest issues that our nation is facing. It is the next generation of leaders. And what are we doing to stand up? What are we doing to stand in the public square? What are we doing to fight this, to protect our children and their young minds from watered down history and from TikTok and from Chinese and CCP? We have so many things to talk about. So I'm excited to bring over Jonathan Emord. Like I said, he has been here to the show. Jonathan, welcome to Common Sense America. I tell you what a Monday, February the 13th. I hope you're ready for Valentine's Day. I adore your wife.
I'm ready.
Good. So, Jonathan, congratulations on your candidacy for United States Senate for 2024. I am excited to have you here to talk about that. First and foremost, what really brought you to the point of wanting to run for Senate? Because you are a constitutional law attorney, you're an author, you have been at the forefront in a couple different fields that really have stuck to my heart, and that is education and our next generation. But why run for Senate?
Well, when all of us are witnessing the destruction of our country by people who are enemies from within, and it's ruinous to the point where if we don't take action now, we are going to lose our country, and very well might lose our country in a way that leads us to be under total totalitarian control. Mm-hmm. It is a very serious destruction of all of those things that define American greatness. Mm-hmm. Family, and the Constitution, our rights, all of these things are directly at stake. So the thing that motivated me is the constant reminder in my head that when I reach old age and I'm looking back at my life, mm-hmm. and asking myself, did I live my life in vain? Mm-hmm. I want to be sure that I fulfilled my mission here on earth. And I think that in this instance, if I did not run for the United States Senate in 2024, I would be regretful for not having tried to save my country, save the people of this country from communism and socialism, and from the ruination of our whole social fabric. Mm-hmm. It's a necessity. And rather than hide from the problems, I want to take them on. I've always been that sort of a person.
Hmm.
And I've defeated the federal government 8 times in federal court during my career, and it's because I'm zealously committed to trying to do all I can to save my country. But now the task is at hand. We have to, if we can, those of us who are not politicians, who love this country, who
Right.
understand the workings of the bureaucracy.
Mhm.
That's why I'm driven to federal office, because the greatest threat to our liberties lurks inside this bureaucracy, which makes 3/4 of all federal law. It's not the product of those we elect. It's the product of the unelected heads of these agencies. That's virtually all law. So it
Yes.
needs to be, we need to restore the Constitution. We need to make those in Congress accountable to the people again. And so
Mhm.
these are among the reasons why I was motivated to run.
In the great state of Virginia, you have seen so much over the past couple years since COVID, the mandates, the authoritarian mentality, the CRT in the schools, the transgender issues. And I know looking at your website, which I shared with the audience, CRT and the education piece is at the very top of your list of things that you want to talk about. If you could share briefly, what are some of the still concerns that you are seeing in the state of Virginia as it pertains to CRT, and then also that huge transgender issue that continues to rear its ugly head. It's like Satan popping up every 5 seconds, trying to infiltrate the young minds of this next generation.
So the National Education Association, the Department of Education in Virginia has for many years now been advancing the CRT agenda in the schools. Critical race theory is Marxism. It teaches children to hate themselves, hate each other, hate their country, hate free enterprise. And when you turn children into ideologues who hate their own country, you can't very well expect them to be the generation that will protect their country or uh, raise the standard of living in this country, because they're raised to be dependents. They're raised to be led by Marxists. This is a ruination of that generation, of generation after generation that has undergone this. And so CRT is being taught in public schools, contrary to what my opponent Tim Kaine has said. It is being taught in public schools. Parents in Loudoun County and Fairfax County are well aware of that. And it is very destructive. And for us not to exercise our rights as parents because the schools are saying that we have no rights is really a really horrible situation. Under
Mhm.
the Constitution's 14th Amendment, we have rights over the upbringing and education of our children. Schools aren't to be our masters, they're to be our servants. They're
Mhm.
supposed to teach our children, not indoctrinate them. And
Right.
this is why I'm driven by this, because without question, the most precious people that we have among us are our children.
Mhm.
We have to defend them against abuse. This is child abuse. And when you talk about transitioning, what a horrendous ruination of kids. We're talking about the manipulation of them into really self destruction.
Mhm.
When you talk about transitioning, first, it's a lie from the very start. You can't transition away from your birth gender. You
Right.
can't become a person
Right.
if you're born female that's male. You can't become a person who's male if you're born female. Your birth gender defines who you are. If you take that gender and mutilate it, you have mastectomies, hysterectomies, give hormone blockers and the opposite hormone to try to make you appear to
Mhm.
be the opposite gender. In the end, all you're doing is mutilating your body and causing yourself to be drugged with substances that are carcinogenic. And so what we're doing is abusing children when we do that. We
Right.
abuse them. I mean, look, keeping children innocent and protected from overt sexualization and from manipulation over who they are
Mhm.
is critical to
Yes.
their well-being and development. They have to be able to develop through puberty and to come to an understanding of what they will be in the world. They can't have uh, authority figures in the schools asking them to question their gender. They
Mhm.
have no particular commitment to a gender per se, other than their birth gender until they are old enough to make a decision. And if they make a fateful wrong decision, it had better not be when they're young under the influence of authority figures in the schools or complicit physicians and counselors.
Mhm.
That is just absolutely horrific child abuse, and it must be made illegal. So I've I've proposed, if I become a United States Senator, I will introduce legislation to make it a crime, federal crime, nationwide, to aid or to cause the transitioning of anyone under the age of 18.
When you become United States Senator of the great state of Virginia, also tell me this: as we look at this transgender issue, I had somebody from the great state of California message me, a conservative in thought, message me and said, who can we reach out to at state and local levels to stop this transgender agenda, whether it's in California, whether it's here in North Carolina? What can people do, the concerned common sense citizen, do to really get involved to prevent it from happening at the local level? Because as you become United States Senator, that is going to be leading the way for the great state of Virginia from the federal level. But what can we do at the local level to prevent this or to stop it where it's already happening, where it's already infiltrating? What are tools that people can use to fight this, whether they're parents, godparents, grandparents?
Well, on just quickly on the federal level, what I
Mhm.
would do is cut off all federal funding to any school that is engaged in the what is in fact a violation of the Equal Protection Clause. That is discriminating against children or classifying children or giving them advantages or assigning them disadvantages based on race.
Mhm.
Anything that would be based on race, a distinction drawn in education, is a violation of the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. And I will enforce the 14th Amendment in Congress by passing legislation to cut off all federal funding to any school
Mhm.
engaged in CRT,
Mhm.
because it's inherently a divisive, race-based system of education that is a patent violation of the Equal Protection Clause of the
Mhm.
14th Amendment of the Constitution. On the state and local level, what people need to do is become active in attending school board meetings and
Mhm.
making their thoughts known directly and allowing their voices to be heard rather than silent. You can't expect changes to take place in the local schools without getting involved in the school boards. And furthermore, voting out of office those school board members who are responsible
Right.
for upholding this education system and replacing them with those who are interested in protecting your children. That's
Mhm.
what you have to do. You have to become involved, and
Mhm.
you have to get involved with the school boards and with this whole movement, which is now nationwide,
Yes.
oppose the transitioning of children in schools and to oppose CRT in the schools, Marxism.
Do you think also another answer would be just to, for parents who are really involved, just to pull their kids out and start homeschooling them?
Yes. Yes. Virginia is not one of the states that has a perfect school choice plan, but that is something that I'm pushing for. I've written legislation for that that will be introduced by a new United States or new Virginia state senator.
Okay.
But it is critical that school choice be adopted. But when in instances like Virginia, where school choice is not present
Mhm.
universally, what you need to have is the courage to just take your children out of school, either homeschool them, or if you can afford it, have a tutor school them at home.
Mhm.
Because the schools, I mean, it's not every school in Virginia, but if your school in Virginia is indoctrinating kids with a heavy dose of CRT, and
Right.
you have this transitioning movement, and you can't even count on the safety of your children in school,
Mhm.
to take these steps. And my own children, I have my own daughter presently tutored. My son and daughter were tutored. Both of them wanted to go to public school because they wanted to be with their friends. So they went into high school. My daughter left after 3 days because she was absolutely appalled by the pornography in the schools, the whole business about gender, and then in addition to that, the heavy dose of Marxism that is there. So she refused to go. My son's reaction was, Dad, I have to play professional sports. I want to be a professional tennis player. I'm
Mhm.
going to stick around in this, but I want you to know that I think it's ridiculous. But he is weathering the storm in order to gain that opportunity for tennis. But he's older. I mean, these kids are my children were brought up in very strong, with a very strong moral foundation, along with a very strong educational foundation. And as a result, they're able to perceive the evil. What's really horrible, though, is that the vast majority of children, of course, are
Mhm.
highly impressionable. And as a consequence, they just go along with this. And some of them are led to believe it. And that's what's so tragic. We don't have a school system that can reliably educate. What we have is a system of indoctrination for a Marxist end. They're trying to create revolutionaries who will tear down every institution in this country that is responsible for our great nation. And if we don't stop this, we are going to see that come to pass. Already, when you look at polling that takes place with the youth, we find that the younger people are overwhelmingly favoring socialism. And
Mhm.
this, you know,
Yep.
there's no country in the world that has adopted a system of socialism that has not fallen economically, with people ultimately having a mediocre existence, with mediocrity being the common characteristic of society. We are a great people. We should never be a mediocre people. We should always aspire to excellence, and we should teach our children to aspire to excellence. And we need to teach our children basic moral values.
Mhm.
They're committed, and we need to teach our children respect for religion, and for not only having their own religion, but also respect for others' religions.
Right.
This is essential. We have a country that was predicated upon these values, and without these values, without education, without the ability to continue to aspire to excellence in everything we do as a people individually, we will very soon find ourselves in a state where the rest of the world can dominate us.
Mhm.
Internally, people interested in profiting off of our weakness will gain the upper hand, and we will have a Marxist state. Um,
It almost feels like that to a point now. When you look at the percentage, I think it was Heritage Daily Signal put out maybe a couple weeks ago, the percentages of this next generation who are just uninterested in the United States of America, uninterested in serving this nation. They would rather have, their silver tray and eat off of it, and the comfort levels of what the Biden dictatorship has shown them. And I just sit there and say, are we already there? Because if you look at our defense, if you already look at the infiltration of what's happening within our defense, and what's happening with the diversity, equity, and inclusion, it seems like that's more important to the Department of Defense than it is to shoot down the Chinese balloons and anything else. Now they're shooting down everything. But why did it take so long? What are your thoughts on our defense from when you become senator? What are your thoughts on that? And what are your thoughts on what is ahead for our nation on international waters?
well, we have done ourselves a huge disservice by taking a level of readiness that was high and polluting it with this whole CRT type of agenda.
Mhm.
Military, the effect of that has been devastating. It is destroying morale. It is discouraging recruitment. We have a whole platoon size recruitment need that is not being fulfilled. I mean, even to the point of actually being at full regiment size, we are not. We are losing people that are essential in the military. Not only that, we're also reducing the standards in basic training. We're also causing people who are career military people to be driven out by vax mandates, which are ridiculous.
Yep.
They've driven out tens of thousands of people from the military. They have caused several to be forced out. They have caused special forces soldiers, the highest caliber and quality, to leave the military or be forced out because of vax mandates. And then this whole woke agenda is driving out a whole bunch of patriots out of the United States military. We don't need to be engaged in social engineering in the United States military. That is ruinous to morale, esprit de corps, which is essential to a fighting force that's cohesive and capable of defending us and understanding of what they're fighting for. They're not fighting for an LGBTQ agenda. They're not fighting for equity, which is really socialism. They are fighting for freedom. Our republic is predicated on individual liberty. When they go to battle, they're fighting for freedom. When they fight for freedom overseas, they can't be led to understand that when they come back home, they're going to live in socialism or that their freedoms themselves are going to be violated. So if we don't get this right, if we don't rid the whole military of this woke agenda, we are going to witness an internal destruction of our means of self-defense. In addition to that, we have huge demands for growth of the military in
Right.
specific areas.
Yes.
If we're going to continue to compete against China and the rest of the world that hates us, those parts of the world that hate us, we have to have a Navy that's second to none.
Yes.
We have to develop a submarine force and a drone force for the Navy that will enable us to meet the needs of future generations in defense of this country. But not only that, we need a hypersonic weapons system, both conventional and nuclear. We need to upgrade our nuclear arsenal. We need to have an increase in the number of Space Force operations going on platforms in orbit so that we can counter what China is doing right now in space. When it comes to these incursions into American airspace, it's revealing some rather profound weaknesses. Why is it that we have problems identifying craft entering our airspace under 60,000 feet?
Right.
What is that? We need to correct that. We need to build that. We need to fortify our own infrastructure domestically so that the internet and all of the means for communication electronically is not subject to an attack that will disable our entire system. And not only that, but all of the other systems too: basic electrical grids, basic system for the distribution of water and gas and fuel oil and so forth. All of them are vulnerable, and we are not taking the steps that we need to take immediately to fortify and create redundancy in systems that will protect us against a cyber attack, or against a force that's coming from us at multiple levels.
Right.
But the greatest threat to our survival is from internally. The communist Chinese working to effectively overthrow our system of government by using proxies in this country as well as their own people. We have 97,000 Chinese nationals in the United States, each of whom, under the Chinese Ministry of State Secrets, is obliged to engage in espionage while here if asked by that ministry, agents of that ministry. We can't tolerate that. We should be removing those 97,000 Chinese nationals from the United States who are here on visas. Removing them. That should be our response to this in part. And then we also need to get energy independence. If we don't have energy independence, we simply can't maintain a military force capable of defending our country. And if we destroy the fossil fuel foundation of the economy, as Biden is planning and as Tim Kaine is supporting, we would end up, if we go that route within the next 6 or so years, we're going to completely destroy our country, the economy, and also the military. So we've got to go in the opposite direction. We need to be energy independent. We should be having liquefied natural gas stations in Europe. We should be the primary source of external oil and gas to Europe, replacing Russia. And we should aggressively work to develop and expand a free enterprise economy in the United States. If we do that, we will have the wherewithal to face any threat anywhere in the world. If we don't do that, we're
Mhm.
not going to have that wherewithal, and we're going to witness our national security become imperiled, and many, many people will take advantage of it. What we're seeing right now with these incursions is,
Mhm.
is a simple testing of our responsiveness and of our willingness to defend our own interests. If we aren't willing to defend our own interests, then Taiwan can be taken by the Chinese.
Yes.
If we aren't willing to defend our own interests, we, of course, cannot be expected to defend our interests anywhere in the world. So the Chinese are testing us. Xi Jinping wants to take Taiwan at
Yes.
the earliest possible moment. It
Mhm.
does not necessarily even have to be a military invasion of Taiwan if they could succeed in undermining the regime and basically overthrowing it. Their method historically has been to exploit the weaknesses of the enemy. What they do is they befriend a power that they wish to destroy,
Right.
and then they identify the weaknesses of that power, and then they slowly exploit those weaknesses until the opponent is in a weakest state, and then they take over.
Mhm.
This is the plan that they're using around the world and with the United States.
Mhm.
And Taiwan, yes, ultimately will be a military invasion,
Right.
Xi Jinping. But why aren't we engaging in direct interaction with the Taiwanese so that they have a meaningful strategic assurance of American support? Why
Mhm.
are we not working with our allies, particularly the Australians,
Yes.
to identify locations where the Taiwanese military can fortify and develop defenses outside of the island and use other means, such as space based means, to maintain their fight against the Chinese and deter an initial invasion. If the Chinese are forced to fight against Taiwan in multiple locations,
Mhm.
which they cannot invade because of them being associated with a foreign power without risking war with that power, then they're going to be deterred. And what we don't have in place with this administration is an effective development of a deterrence plan that
Mhm.
will ensure that Taiwan can remain independent. Instead, what we have is essentially a total responsive platform, one that does not act in advance to
Right.
prevent the risks that we're facing, but simply responds when
Mhm.
when the risks are exploited. We can't have that. We have to be on the offense. We have to exploit their weaknesses. We have to use free enterprise to our advantage. We have to build America and make it second to none.
As you were saying all of that, I was thinking about the Biden dictatorship and why would they have a proactive approach? Because they have already sold their soul to the devil. In many senses of everything that's coming out with the CCP and Ukraine and all the money that's being funneled to the Ukraine and everything that's been going on with the Hunter Biden laptop that he plainly and openly said, yes, that was my laptop. So, as we look at Biden as a commander in chief, I don't think so. And he sits there and is always a response and no proactive approach. It's because he's already sold his soul to the devil, and that devil is the CCP. And that is what is really making our nation so vulnerable right now. My husband, retired Army, sits here and says, okay, they keep shooting down. What's next? They are watching us. We are coming into something that is about to happen. And common sense would say to you, we are very vulnerable right now.
Well, we are, and it's not only it's not an eventuality; it's happening right now. Our southern border. I mean, we had an 800% increase in the number of Chinese nationals coming through illegally at our southern border. The world is exploiting our weakness. We have a president who will not even defend our own borders, who is allowing terrorists, drug trafficking, sex
Yep.
trafficking,
Yep.
fentanyl, criminal gangs, all sorts of criminal elements are pouring through our southern border because this president will not defend our interests. He has
Mhm.
given way to it. In fact, he is responsible
Mhm.
for our vulnerability in every sense of the word. He is not acting where he should act, where the law even requires him to act. He's not acting, and he's totally compromised. I mean, he received funding from the CCP through their proxies because of Hunter receiving it, and it
Yep.
went into a joint bank account with Joe, and
Yep.
Joe spent that money, had that money expended on his own expenses, on
Mhm.
his own mortgages.
Yeah.
And this is a very corrupt president, the most corrupt president we've ever had. And yet, look, the corruption runs deep. Where is the prosecution of Hunter Biden for all
Right.
of the overt criminal acts that he's committed? Where is the prosecution? Where is the investigation of Joe Biden? Where is the appointment of a special prosecutor to investigate Joe Biden for all of the violations of law? He violated the Foreign Emoluments Clause of the Constitution by receiving money from foreign powers.
Mhm.
He did that while vice president of the United States.
Yes.
He may continue to be doing that right now through Hunter Biden, for all we know. There's
Right.
no investigation going on. It is not a coincidence that he does nothing to stand up against the Chinese. It's not a coincidence that he fails to protect our border.
Right.
These are decisions he's made as commander in chief to not be commander in chief. And that those are impeachable offenses.
Yes, they are.
But we are stuck with a dilemma. Who on earth would want Kamala Harris to become president of the United States? She would be the only thing worse than Joe Biden would be Kamala Harris.
Right.
So, I mean, we're stuck there, but there should still be an impeachment hearing in the United States
Yeah.
House of Representatives. Joe Biden should be impeached, and then the Senate can take it up, and within one day of his last day in office, they can vote to remove him in order that justice might be served ultimately. But we had a clean house at the Department of Defense. We have to clean house at the
Yes.
Justice Department.
Yes.
I would be in favor of legislation to take away the jurisdiction of the Department of Justice, FBI, over issues that are wholly intrastate with parents protesting at school boards.
Mhm.
That would be something. I mean, why on earth is the FBI and the Attorney General looking at taking action against parents who are exercising their First Amendment right to criticize school boards about the abuse of their own children in the schools with CRT and transitioning? Why would the Attorney General of the United States think of these parents as terrorists and treat them like terrorists? We've got to disarm the Attorney General from the ability to use power, federal power, to invade the state province of the states and go after parents for protesting at school board meetings.
Mhm.
That's a sad reality that it's become necessary, but the fact that he took those actions and still has that ridiculous memo he wrote where he calls for joint federal and state operations against parents,
Right.
still that thing is still there. He hasn't withdrawn it. So
There's one thing I was thinking through as you were talking about the FBI and the Attorney General. Don't you believe that they have been compromised? Why else would all of these things continue to happen? Because the FBI had Hunter Biden's laptop for how long?
yes, yeah, there's no excuse for this. I mean, literally none. There is no reason whatsoever for Hunter Biden not to be federally prosecuted. All the evidence is there, it's in plain sight. And furthermore, the investigations that are going on already have garnered enough information to allow a fulsome prosecution or an indictment before a grand jury, but it's not happening. And it's not happening for political reasons. That's the only reason why it's not happening. We don't have equal justice under law in this country. We have a bifurcated system operating right now where if you're a Democrat, you're insulated from investigation and prosecution. But if you're a Republican, my goodness, they will not only allow prosecution, but they'll allow it on a hoax.
Right.
President Trump was not colluding with the Russians. There's
Right.
no evidence to support that. And yet they maintain that through his whole administration and used the FISA courts based on false declarations from Justice
Mhm.
and a false Steele dossier that they knew to be false, that was created at the behest of the Clinton Kaine campaign. I mean,
Mhm.
Kaine has never distanced himself from Hillary Clinton, my opponent in Virginia. He's wedded to her completely. And you know, when they had the scandal associated with her moving emails from the
Right.
State Department to her private server, all emails that went to the Secretary of State while Clinton was Secretary of State, she had redirected to her home server that was unsecure. That not only violates federal law, pertaining to the Freedom of Information Act and the storage of documents at the State Department. But it also violated the Espionage Act because over 100 of those emails were classified documents.
Mhm.
And ordinarily, virtually everybody who would do even one of those
Mhm.
prosecuted and would be thrown into jail. And Comey let Clinton off scot-free. But
Yeah.
you know what? The story that isn't told is that Tim Kaine stood by her the whole time. And so you've got somebody, and it's the Clinton Kaine campaign
Yeah.
gave the Steele dossier to the Justice Department to use in this whole corrupt scandal. So he's gotten off scot-free as far as corruption is concerned, but he doesn't deserve it. He deserves to be held accountable as well. And when it comes to this whole thing with the use of her office,
Right.
Hillary Clinton used her office for influence peddling. It's not just Joe Biden, it's Hillary Clinton.
Mm-hmm.
And the Clinton Foundation received vast sums of money from foreign countries that were then followed up with visits to Hillary Clinton at the State Department or actions by Hillary Clinton. So this whole corrupt influence peddling scandal that we see with the Biden administration was also happening in the Obama administration,
Right.
vice president, and
Right.
also with Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, and that's how deep it goes. That really is how deep it goes. As you talk about Kaine being the United States senator, so everything that he has been associated with Hillary Clinton, and that would also include something that is really important to me, and that is combating human trafficking. That's combating sexual abuse of children, and those waters run deep within Clinton, Obama, and Biden. And that is a huge.
I mean, Kaine has literally done nothing to interdict the cartels and their human trafficking operations. He's done nothing to secure the border. He's absolutely opposed to any measure that would result in the total security of our people on the southern border. And he's been complicit in all of this. He's never seen a spending bill over $1 trillion that he's not voted for. He votes for every trillion plus bill that comes down the pike. He doesn't care about inflation. He doesn't even talk about inflation. He doesn't even address the issues that Virginians care about. He doesn't care about gas prices. He doesn't care about the end of the fossil fuel industry. He simply does not act against this president's agenda, not one iota, when his own constituents are suffering as a result of it. And that means he's complicit in it. He's essentially, for all intents and purposes, answerable to Chuck Schumer and Bill and Biden, and not answerable to the people of Virginia.
What is one thing when you are sworn in as a United States Senator from the great state of Virginia? What is the first thing that you will do as you bring your first bill to the floor? What will be that first thing that's on your checklist? I know you have a long list, but what would be the first thing that you would undo from the Kaine regime, if you will?
There's no more important or urgent thing than to protect our children. And our children really are being victimized in the public schools. This abuse of them. And so what I will do, the first thing I will do is introduce legislation to make it a federal felony for anyone to aid in the transitioning or to cause the transitioning of anyone under the age of 18. And the second thing that I will do is introduce legislation to cut off all federal funding for any school that is engaged in racism, that is engaged, and I will call as a part of that bill for the federal auditing of every school in this country to determine whether they are engaged in racism, a violation of the 14th Amendment, and that will trigger the implementation then of a defunding and also even of recommendations for prosecution where warranted for violations of the Civil Rights Act and also for violation of the 14th Amendment. So those are the first two major things that I will do. But in addition to that, I will dramatically cut federal spending. I'll introduce a third bill very quickly that will be I wrote it for Ron Paul years ago, called the Congressional Responsibility and Accountability Act. And what this will do is disarm what is really now a socialist dominated administrative state from completely ruining free enterprise in this country. What it will do, and it will cause an enormous positive reaction in the markets. What it will do is prevent any new regulation from being implemented unless passed into law by Congress. The agencies would only be able to propose actions. Congress would have to pass them into law. The president would have to sign them. And in addition, all existing regulations would be sunsetted within 3 years unless passed into law by Congress, within 3 years of the passage of the legislation. So that legislation I will introduce and fight for that as well. And then, of course, there will be a reduction in federal spending in order to reduce inflation. We will also open up the oil and gas spigots in this country. What we will do is create a free market environmentalism approach to this, rather than a top-down government mandated go all solar and wind, which is ruinous to the economy and ruinous to the environment. What we do instead is encourage oil and gas drilling, production, and distribution, but we'll give tax credits to companies that implement significant pollution reducing technologies, such as the technology of Dr. Martin in Charlottesville, Virginia, which is amazing technology that causes, for example, the tar sands in the tar sand region to be broken into pristine elements. One is light sweet crude oil of the highest caliber. Second is pure water. And the third is pure sand. You can do something that actually improves the environmental quality and reduces pollution significantly. This is the thing. What we have now is such a radical environmental agenda. It's really a Trojan horse for the delivery of socialism, total command control over the economy, which will ruin us. It'll cause what has happened to Europe to happen to us, with all these disasters taking place. Already they are taking place in the agricultural community. We're seeing underproduction, which is going to result in shortages. We're seeing fertilizer costs go through the roof, preventing people from being able to farm their entire farms. So watching, this is going to hit us. It's going to come up in the summertime and later. It's going to hit us with shortages and so forth, but in an increase in prices. So inflation is going to continue to rise. But if we go this other route, which I've advocated, which is to give incentives to business to actually come up with inventions to reduce pollution, we can have a human environment as well as an animal environment, and we don't have to sacrifice human life in order to protect the environment. That's a false choice. We are part of the environment. We don't want to destroy humanity in order to enhance the environment. What do you think? We're complete lunatics? We should be people who are dedicated to a coexistence. We want to protect the environment and keep people. The best way to do that is to incentivize the very industries that are engaged in creating oil and energy for us to be mindful of alternatives, to look for them, and to integrate them. They have a natural incentive to do that because pollution is inefficient. And so it's a market inefficiency. And that's why over time, the greatest innovations that have taken place to protect the environment have come about through innovation in the private sector, not government mandates.
Exactly. Well, I'm going to leave it on this note. I could keep you on here for another hour. You are a wealth of information. Even the Turning Point USA high school students I had on Thursday, they want to become lawyers. And I said, go pick up The Authoritarians. You will need to read this, and make sure you tune in and watch Jonathan Emord. On a final note, as you become the next senator from the great state of Virginia, one thing I would love to say is please bring some decorum and protocol back to the United States Chamber. And also, if you could, I would love it if you would remain keeping your doors open to the constituents of We the People that voted our elected officials in. Too many of those doors are closed now, and it's just become no longer We the People. It has become such a socialistic mentality, that authoritarian mentality that you talk about in your book. And it would be great to see that for the great state of Virginia, and then you leading the way for many others. So many blessings to you, and I look forward to having you back and following your campaign. And I've been having the website go along the bottom of the show. So thank you, Jonathan Emord. I appreciate you very much. Many blessings to you and your wife. Happy Valentine's Day, and we'll see you soon.
Same to you. Thank you,
sir. All right. Bye-bye. And for all of those who are tuning in, this is Common Sense America. I'm Eden Hill. And I tell you what, if you haven't had a chance to check out all of my interviews that I've had in the past couple of weeks, go over to my YouTube channel, Common Sense America with Eden Hill. I tell you what, last week we had some phenomenal interviews. This week we do again. You just got to hear from Jonathan Emord, constitutional law attorney, the author of The Authoritarians, and also the candidate for United States Senate for 2024. 2024 can't come soon enough, people. You know what I'm talking about. I know you know what I'm talking about. So if you have a chance, go over to Emord, EMORD for VA.com. Check out the upcoming events. He has a lot of upcoming events coming down the pike in the great state of Virginia and around the region. And also check out a lot of his pieces that he's been talking about. We talked about transgender. We talked about CRT. We talked about defense. We talked about what is coming down the pike for our nation on international waters. And we talked about the, compromise in our intelligence agencies. So a lot at the forefront for this nation. But on that note, I'm going to transition as we only have about a few minutes left here at Common Sense America for this Monday, February the 13th. Tomorrow is Valentine's Day. What have you picked up for your person's special interest, or your husband or your wife, or your grandkids or your boyfriend or your girlfriend, whoever that significant someone is? Today is the final day to go pick something up for them. I know tomorrow my husband and I will be celebrating my parents' wedding anniversary. 47 years, I believe, for my parents and celebrating their wedding anniversary. And then also we have a new special guest tomorrow. We are bringing over to the show Martha Benita Fain. She is found on Instagram, Twitter. She's also on a lot of your social sites, but she is a powerful woman of faith, integrity, and a conservative voice that you have not heard here yet at Common Sense America. So she'll be joining us tomorrow. And then also, I wanted to let you know, I'm going to slide over here for a second. Thanks to the Military Java Group, I got a batch of coffee in the mail yesterday from FedEx, I believe. And I got 3 different coffee bags, all very bold. When I talk to the owner, he will be joining the show, and he's going to be talking about his mission to serve our military, his mission to serve our veterans, and his mission to really just be a part of the whole military community. And all of the proceeds of this coffee, if you go online and purchase from Military Java Group, go to the Semper Fi Fund. So there is definitely a Marine Corps connection here for sure. But the gentleman that founded Military Java Group, Stars and Stripes Java. I had the Bravo Zula Java yesterday in my K-Cup. It also does come in K-Cups. And then the Jarhead Java I have not tried yet, but it looks pretty bold, and I'm looking forward to having all of them are bold roasts. And so Matt Phillips, who is the owner of Military Java Group, will be joining Common Sense America. We'll be doing it more as our military and veteran feature for the week. And then also, we're going to be talking about farmers. So Martha will talk about her Virginia farmland. And then Wednesday, the 15th, we'll be talking to a Georgia farmer who was fighting the Biden and Obama administration and what they're doing to Black farmers in the Southern territories, especially Georgia. So we have a lot of unique guests, brand new guests coming to our show this coming week. And then also, there's a big announcement coming down the pike on Wednesday, February the 15th. It looks like Nikki Haley, the former governor from South Carolina, and also the former UN ambassador for President Donald Trump, will be making a huge announcement. Go follow her on her Twitter accounts. She's leaning, she's been hinting a lot, and my guess is that she's going to be announcing her candidacy for president. That's my guess. I'm not announcing it officially here, but that's what it looks like. Also, if you had a chance to check out any of the Kelsey brothers and the Super Bowl and their family, what a neat family. They came from Ohio. They have amazing stories. And I found some on Instagram. I can't show them here, but I found a couple of the Kelsey brothers Travis Kelce, who plays for the Kansas City Chiefs, he was on the sidelines and he was talking to one of the coaches, and he's like, "Hey, that phone you got there, can you make a call?" And he said, "Can you call my mom and tell her I don't want macaroni and cheese for dinner? I want gnocchi and another noodle or something." And he kept saying it wrong and kept saying it wrong, but all he knew was he did not want mac and cheese for dinner for his mom. And I thought that was pretty special. But looking at the Twitter feed post the Eagles and the Kansas City Chiefs game last night, Travis Kelce posted a picture of he and his brother hugging, and it's called Brotherly Love. Chiefs tight end Travis Kelce reveals emotional message to his big brother, Jason Kelce, following the dramatic Super Bowl victory. There's nothing really I could say to him except I love him, and he played a hell of a year and a hell of a season, which was really neat. And it was just special to see the two of them and the brotherly love. So on that note, I am going to leave you on this beautiful Monday morning here at Common Sense America. It's Monday, February the 13th. Get ready for Valentine's Day tomorrow. And we have a lot of great guests for the short week ahead. And I look forward to joining each and every one of you tomorrow. Until then, be strong and be courageous. You got a lot of work to do, so go do it. We'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for joining.